Welcome to Joanna the Medium Show, broadcast on Ever Beyond Radio and through the Wolf Spirit Media Network, helping you transform from fear to freedom and reminding you of your true power. During this broadcast, we will discuss anything and everything connecting to owning your inner power and the essence of your spirit. We will hear inspiring stories from guests, as well as guidance from the spirit world. Jump on board for this incredible ride. Here's your host, Joanna.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We have an exciting show tonight. For those of you who are new, welcome, and I do hope you stay. And for those of you who are returning, thank you so much for coming back. As always, I have an incredible guest tonight, and I'm very excited because he is an astrologer. He's also a psychic medium, and he was literally presented to me by the universe literally hours ago. So when that happens, I call it divine timing, and it always makes me feel like a little girl in a candy store. So without further ado, we actually might take calls today, but just kind of hang on until a little bit later towards the show once we start going with the information. So Joseph and I will talk about astrology, obviously, but we will focus, or he will focus on the eclipses of 2018. But first and foremost, who is Joseph? So Joseph is an astrologist. He's also a psychic medium. You can find him on YouTube channel. He has his own channel, and you can look for him under Joseph P. Anthony. His website is also josephpanthony.com, and I will let him also tell you that information. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on Joseph. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, Joanna. Hello, and thank you for having me on. I'm well. I'm doing well.
I'm excited, and I thank you for joining me. You and I chatted a few minutes before, and we were like little bzz, bzz, bzz batteries, feeding off of each other. So tell us, first and foremost, you have a YouTube channel, so that was under Joseph P. Anthony. Is that correct?
Yes, if you just Google me, Joseph P. Anthony, Sedona, or my website, josephpanthony.com, and then I have another website called planetswithin.com. Any one of those will get you to the information. Facebook, I'm on social media quite a bit. So if someone was looking, if they put in psychic astrologer Joseph P. Anthony, I'd come up probably a lot faster.
So that's actually quite interesting because I have obviously read about you. You have done this work for quite some time. And I meet a lot of mediums. I meet a lot of psychics for obvious reasons. And I also meet a lot of astrologers. But it is not an everyday occurrence that I get the pleasure to speak with a medium, psychic medium, who is also an astrologer. So I don't know much about astrology. As you guys know, I do my YouTube channel readings, and I divide them by each sign, but that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge. So it's very exciting for me to talk about Joe because sorry, can I call you Joe? Or do you go by Joe or Joseph?
Joe, Joseph, whatever you want to call me. It's fine.
People used to call me Joe. It's like, no, just call me Joanna. So I just want to make sure that, you want me to call me what okay. So tell us a little bit about you. Just a, brief kind of intro. How long you've been doing this, what you specialize in, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, as I like to say in front of my live audiences, I came out of the womb asking questions. From the moment I realized, who I was or where I was, I started asking questions. Who are these people? Why am I here? I know I have a purpose. There's something I'm supposed to know, supposed to do. And I was searching for answers all the way up into my teenage years, but I could never find the answers growing up in New York. And, but I was, studying everything on human behavior that you could imagine. I had a subscription to Psychology Today at 13. I don't know about how too many 13-year-olds have Psychology Today subscriptions. Just devouring anything that I could find, on human nature. And it wasn't until in my later 20s that I discovered the metaphysical stuff. And, it was just, my birthday, if you go by those birthday books that, The Secret Language of Birthdays, they're excellent books. The birthday that I happen to have been born under is the day of human observation. And that's what I've been doing my entire life, just observing, trying to understand every facet of human nature. And when I got into the metaphysical, I really started putting the pieces together because I've studied religions, mythologies, and so on, and I realized that whatever the source is that we call God, Yahweh, whatever it is, it's an energy field or an energy source that is in humans and in every living being or entity. And it just, that's the way it works. And I realized that astrology and the tarot and the numerology and whatever else that you want to, categorize is all a symbolic language for understanding this energy. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Yeah. Something you said, which I smiled when you said it at a very young age, you were asking questions. I remember when I was about the age of 5 or 6, that's my very first memory where when I look back, I kind of go, there was something odd about me because I remember, and it's clear as day. It was many, many years ago. I was about 5 or 6. I was in the kitchen back in Poland cleaning before my mom got home. And I remember I was so overcome by this incredible sadness. And I said out loud, God, why am I here? And I forgot. And then in my 30s, I thought, wait a minute. I don't think that's a typical question a 5-year-old asks themselves. So that was my first explanation. Yeah. But anyway, sorry to stop you.
No, it's okay. I mean, let me ask you a question because from about the age of 2 all the way to about 13, I saw my past lives. Wow. And it was real interesting. It was like clear as day. And I was wondering, why am I seeing this? Because obviously I didn't know what I was seeing. Mm-hmm. But now I do. And it's just incredible. But you probably remember your past lives too between that age, because that's the time we usually have the past life experience.
Well, it's really interesting. This is one of those interesting things that I have no recollection of having any awareness of anything other than the human aspect, aside from one moment. So the one that I just said, but also there was one, and was within probably a year. I remember looking in the kitchen, standing and looking outside the window, and I remember having this crystal clear thought. And the thought was this: wherever we come from, we create purely by thinking. I don't know how I knew this. I don't know how it came around. My background was back then in being Catholic. So that was one of those moments of the crystal clarity. But aside from that, I have no memory of anything out of the ordinary. I think I was blocked.
It's possible. It's very possible. I believe that we have doorways that open up, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. When those lunar eclipses hit, or every month we have a full moon, these are like doorways. And what astrology really is understanding the cycles, Joanna, okay? Because we're constantly going around the sun and the planets are on the same trajectory, time after time. They're symbolic. They're symbolic of the cycles. And add the mythology to them, you have this understanding of the psyche of human nature and how the world really works. So this is what I stress to people about astrology. Don't use it to rule your life, but to use it to understand the cycles and use your intuition to make decisions. But astrology is a very powerful tool. Look up the cycles. Are you there, Joanna?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. And so I realized this, and I just put 2 and 2 together, and I started studying the tarot, numerology, all of this stuff, and it's all tied in. No matter which one you use, you get to the same answer. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to friends who are numerologists or expert tarot readers, or even a palmist. I have a good friend who's a palmist, and she's fantastic. And we all get to the same answer, no matter what the question is. We could be asking about the economy, the world. We'll all get to the same answer, whatever tool we use.
It's a tool, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you just briefly mentioned that we're going to talk about the planets this year, because my understanding, and actually talking with you, is that this is a very, can I say a critical year in our existence?
I think they're all critical years, but the next few years, absolutely. I would say the height of the energy and the timing and the cycles, especially in 2020, is very high. The alignments that we astrologers are seeing is very intense. We're either going to have a new form of government around the world or new currency or something dramatic that occurs that we'll all take notice. Now, it doesn't have to be anything bad. I tell people it doesn't have to be anything bad. I mean, to be honest with you, and what I've seen coming, and this is years ago, is going to involve ETs and UFOs. And as crazy as that sounds, until you research this topic, you realize, my God, they've been here all along. So, I don't know if you've gotten that information, Joanna, but this is not too far off.
Intuitively, and I've had this fascination with UFO since I was around the age of 5. So you're talking my language here. I don't necessarily express a lot of that in my public life yet, but it's certainly an area that really fascinates me. And yes, I have been told that over the next few years we will see a occurrence of the, ET component, but it's going to be much more frequent.
Yes. I actually saw, and I'll tell you and your listeners, about 2023, 2024, I was sort of looking at the future, and I saw these craft flying around just like we would see a normal jet airline. And it was just common. It was a common occurrence, and we were looking up going, oh, I wonder where that ship is from or that craft is from. Mm-hmm. And so it was almost like society was beginning to accept it. Now, this could be society as a whole, or maybe the Sedona society, because we see them here all the time, or it could be just that people that need to see them because their technology is so advanced. But anyway, the future that we're going into is unlike anything we've experienced ever before. The last time this kind of energy was in the air was about 26,000 years ago, and I'll explain that in a minute too. But this is uncharted territory that we're going into.
Speaking of the frequencies of seeing UFOs, there was a question posted from me a couple of months ago, and I don't remember what the question was, but I remember the answer was that actually the question was, why haven't we seen as many up until this point? So the answer was, yes, we have. Some of us or some people may not want that to be known out there, but also it's because if we were to have more visibility to what is out there, our level of consciousness is not ready to be able to handle it without going into a panic mode.
Exactly. It would change our entire belief system at a rapid rate, and I see that happening. Fortunately, the generations that have come in, let's say in the 80s and the 90s and the ones today, they will accept this information easily. Yes. It's the older generations that are going to have a tough time with it, and those that have based their belief system in this reality. In other words, money, job, children, that's it. I don't want to know. I want to retire, and that's it.
Status quo, yeah.
Right. They don't want to dig deeper. And so the information that's going to be coming out, and it's coming very quickly, is going to overwhelm too many people. So they don't want to create these negative energy waves. That's the only way I could describe it, into sort of these higher realms of consciousness. Because everything is multidimensional. Here we are in the 3D world, but when we go to sleep, we're going into the 4th and the 5th and the 6th realms of consciousness without physical form.
Right.
So, and they exist in those realms. Because the technology is so advanced, their capacity is so much more advanced than ours at the moment. And they're able to travel through that time and space, you see.
So let me ask a question on that note. Do you feel that, let me just see how I can ask it. My guide says, just ask the question. Sometimes I overcomplicate my questions. Do you feel because of this energy, it is why we have more people being aware of their gifts? And also, even with me, the last 3 years have been literally 180-degree shift for me when it comes to me and my awareness and my connection.
Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. Well, let me tell you what's actually going on real quickly. I've been studying the Mayan calendar. I spoke to some of the experts. I've studied many of the ancient cultures, and also the Hopi Indians and so on. And they all talk about 2012, the year specifically, and the month and the date, December 21st, 2012. This is the moment we crossed over the galactic plane into what's called the photon belt. This is a span that is about a 2,000-year cycle across. Now, you could Google this and you'll see, hopefully you'll find some pictures that explain it. And this is a band that's aligned with the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And why this is important is because this photon belt is a higher frequency. It's higher vibration because the central sun, Alcyon, A-L-C-Y-O-N-E, is located in that central, corridor. And we have this intense energy coming towards us. And what that does is it amplifies our natural energy in our bodies, our psychic ability, our physical changes that we're experiencing, the sun's changing its frequency, which affects the Earth's magnetic fields and so on. So yes, we are feeling more in tune because it's like we've just gotten a jolt of electricity, or we're going to continue to get this jolt of electricity that lights up the circuitry of our bodies and minds and spirit. You see? And so if you're not on the higher plane of understanding who you are, what life is all about, and you're going to just stay in this mode of fear and anxiety and stress, you're going to amplify that. Yes.
Whoa. Major hurdle to overcome. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what's really going on. And so I love when people ask me, when's it going to get better? I go, about 2,000 years.
Yeah. It's hard because I see, like, even people surrounding me, those who want to believe but for whatever reason can't get themselves to get there. They're struggling because there is an incredible need of letting stuff go, and the universe is yanking stuff away all over the place. So for people who have been comfortable in status quo, that's hard.
Sure. And we're constantly reminded. Joanna, we're constantly reminded of that every day, even though it's changing rapidly. Think about this for a second. You're born into this world, a boy or a girl, and then right away you're brought into a religion, and then you're told this is who you are and what you're supposed to be doing, and this conditioning has just been going on for generation after generation. It's like you're being boxed in. Your belief system is being limited and boxed in from such an early age. Yep. And this is all done on purpose, unfortunately, what I've discovered. And this is how humanity has been controlled through schooling, religion, and of course parents just not wanting to break free and be different.
Or not knowing how, right? Not knowing how.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because let's face it, you gotta be really brave to go down the rabbit hole of truth. It's going to conflict with everything you think you know. And that's the way I explain it to people. It's like,
if you're not brave, the universe is going to make sure you get there.
Right. Exactly. That's right. But, so we are at a time where I call it the Great Awakening. Because that's what it is. Mm-hmm. It's the Great Awakening, seeing through the illusion, seeing through the limitations, and realizing who we really are. And so that's the beauty of this. And then you, myself, and others who are on this same wavelength are the teachers. We're the ones that are supposed to help lead some of these other folks, and then, to help them understand so they don't have to continue beating themselves up or feeling sorry for themselves or feeling lost or whatever it is. It's to help them get centered and remember who they are, because the soul knows who it is. It really does. It's the mind that gets in the way. So
it's interesting because when all these things happened when I was very young, and then I had a blackout period for a long, long time. But when I was very young, I actually, what is it I was trying to say? Totally slipped my mind. Oh my God, it totally slipped my mind. Oh, it was the religious component. When I was very young and I was going to a Catholic church and catechism and all that, I remember thinking to myself, there's something wrong with this picture. It doesn't make sense to me. And I had no reason to think that other than something inside me said it doesn't make sense to me at a very young age. So at a very young age, I had these things going through my head. I had no idea why it was coming. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's very common with people that are more in tune or spiritually awake, or I was the same way, very similar, in that I would see things like school, education, we were not just there to learn, 1 + 1 = 2 and learn how to read. It was like we were being indoctrinated. Every time you'd hear the bell, you were reacting. And so we were basically like Pavlov's dogs, being trained to follow rules and regulations. And I knew it from an early age. And so when I saw that and I felt that, it felt very uncomfortable. When it was religion, I felt very uncomfortable. I knew there was something wrong. And not until I, discovered all of this and how the world really works, boy, did I say, oh my God, all the pieces fit. Now I understand the big picture. And fortunately, more and more people, because of the internet and sharing sharing information and shows, like this, we are able to see through the illusion. And so, from this point forward, it gets a little weirder for many, but it's a blessing for many of us that already know.
Right. So let me ask you a question, and I already know the answer, I think, intuitively. I'm guessing you were a bit of a rebel when it comes to authority.
Yeah. Yes, that would be me. I was restless. I couldn't keep still and got myself into lots of trouble and fights because of my behavior. Yes.
Yeah.
But that nature is instilled in some of us, and I also believe that it was part of my military background in other lifetimes. Because I was talking about earlier, remembering my past lives. I do remember one of my last past lives was as a military soldier. And so, and I remember it clearly. It was in the 40s. It was in World War II. I was killed in World War II. So I remember it. I was trained and all this other stuff. So it's natural when you come back that quickly after after one lifetime that you're going to still remember those feelings and some of that, those experiences. So.
And you had to be a bit of a rebel in order to continue with that curiosity to help you dig deeper and deeper.
Sure, absolutely. Right. And so, think about this. We are the chosen ones, those of us that made it all the way to the egg, and fertilized and became who we are, and that's a race in itself, if you're talking about at a very, subatomic level there. And so only the strong make it. Well, not only the strong, but I mean, most of the time it's the strong that make it to become, who we are. So, yes, that was that rebel. Now I'm just a lot wiser, and there's that inner peace that comes with knowing.
Hallelujah, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about the planetary alignment. We had an incredible eclipse on January 31st. I felt it for weeks before. I literally, when I said to my guide, "What is going on?" They showed me. It's like my entire circuit system was being upgraded. And I felt so all over the place. So tell us how the last eclipse that we had, how is it going to affect us?
Well, the last eclipse is still in effect all the way probably till the rest of the year, because you see eclipses in astrology take up to 6 months to manifest, sometimes up to a year.
Oh, wow.
So yes, and that's because they're so powerful. They've blocked off the sun or the sun's been blocked. It's all energy. You got to think in terms of energy. So the sun is our energy field. And so every time we have an eclipse, like this one, the earth was blocking, the moon. And so this has a lot to do with the foundation, the home, the feelings. Now, full moons and the moon in astrology represents all of that. The feminine side, the emotions, the family, your grounding, what you feel safe and secure. This lunar eclipse on the 31st was a triple whammy. It was a supermoon. It was a lunar eclipse. It was a blue moon. I mean, we are talking about intense energy, and a lot of people, including myself, had trouble sleeping that night. I mean, I was restless, because of that moon. It was, because when a moon is in effect, it's usually in an opposition position to the sun and so we were caught in the middle between the sun and the moon. And what was happening was we were being pulled on one way and the other. The sun and the moon were sort of tugging at each other, affecting the Earth's magnetic fields and affecting us. So this lunar eclipse is setting the stage for us to completely change the way we think, the way we operate, how we view our home, how we view our families, what we need to let go of, completion. All lunar eclipses have a completion feeling to them, like finishing up, done, over. And so this is, on a personal level, that's what it represents. On a larger scale, let's say, worldwide, we are going to continue to see changes to the powers that shouldn't be. Monarchies, kings, because it was in the sign of Leo. Leo represents those. And so we're going to see people fall from grace, and if you understand anything about these people, I'm going to just say it, they're a bunch of psychopaths. The ones that run the world, consider themselves kings and queens. They're a bunch of psychotic beings that do all kinds of sick rituals. And so you're going to see many of them disappear or leave or get indicted or killed or whatever it is, and we're going to see that throughout this entire year. So that's on a larger scale. We're going to see changes to the economic system. You're going to see changes to gold prices because Leo's associated with gold. Gold is the color associated with Leo. So it's an association game. Everything associated with Leo and the moon,
right.
You can see it reflected.
Power.
Right. The power,
right.
Exactly. Recognition, notoriety. And so for those that, and there's an element of karma that's taking place in the next 2 years because of Saturn. Saturn is in its own sign of Capricorn, which elevates that feeling of karma because Saturn represents karma in astrology. And so we're going to see a lot of karma being dealt to many people that are just not being truthful and not on the wavelength that they should be. And then the good people will be rewarded in a way with more recognition, notoriety. Maybe they'll become counselors for their friends and family. Maybe they'll have a job, high-profile job, where they are much more creative and they get more respect at work and so on and so forth. So these are the dynamics of that last lunar eclipse, Joanna.
So when you talk about karma, JP was just asking, it's both positive and, I don't even like to say positive and negative. It's just what you sow, you reap, right?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
If one is to be lazy and just not do anything and, you're not going to have any rewards, you'll just keep getting the same thing and you won't advance or,
right.
seek your purpose. But karma is a very interesting thing and it's, it's the law of cause and effect.
Yes.
And so if you're putting something into play and you're making it happen and there's good intentions there and you're helping others and, there's a reward at the end of it, sure, that'll come to you. Okay. But if your intent is purely out of selfish, I want to make this and I want that and so on and so forth and I'm going to just stab people in the back and I'm going to take advantage of people and so on and so forth, guess what? Your karma is going to be pretty hard. And that's what we're seeing now with the politicians. The karma is coming back around. And so, I say good.
I think it was last year in one of my extraordinary experiences, Spirit actually said to me what karma was, and I wrote it down because the way it was shown to me and said it was quite magnificent. He actually said to me, karma is nothing more and nothing less than an ability to experience existence from a different perspective.
Sure. Absolutely. And we've talked about this off air. I said, everything is just but an experience here.
Right.
And so when you realize that you are pure consciousness in a physical form, having these different experiences, like you said, there is no good or bad. That's a religious concept. Starting with the Garden of Eden and eating of the apple and all that other nonsense. That's where it comes from, to control humanity and give them this feeling that, in order to repent and save yourself, you must go to this church and that nonsense. But it's basically, experiences. That's all they are. So the greatest experiences are the toughest when we go through tough times. Right. And we come out of them and go, oh, wow, what an experience. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get older, you become more centered and you realize who you are. The experiences of joy become just as grateful or just as beautiful. You go, look at a little baby or something, or you share time with family and people that you really care about. Now you have a different type of joy that you're experiencing, and giving and receiving becomes much more significant.
So speaking of experiences, and this is, I'm going to ask, and your feedback would be great here. I have noticed over the last, I want to say 2 to 3 years, which is where I have totally, literally jump to the other side, so to speak. I have moments sometimes where I become so so at awe with the perfection of the universe. And I don't know how to explain it other than what I feel and the perfection of the imperfection that I see.
Well, to be honest with you, everything is perfect the way it is.
Yes.
Everything. Everything has
even the quote unquote imperfection. Correct. Yes.
Even the imperfection. It serves a purpose. Just like a storm, let's say a tornado destroys an area, homes and so on, or a fire or lightning destroys soil to rebuild. There's a death and rebirth cycle in nature. Okay. And it's in humans too, reincarnation and so on. And so the same, concept exists that it's all perfect. It's all perfect divine energy, working its way through different scenarios and situations. Now, that's not to say human beings don't have an intent, because like you said earlier, our thoughts create reality as well. But even that's perfection, because you're being influenced by your spirit in some way, and your spirit knows, based on your experiences from other lifetimes, from curiosity, from whatever. And still even that knows. So there's a constant perfection. Now, if we take something like planet Earth, all right, for instance, we are literally destroying the planet. And when I say we, I mean the powers that shouldn't be, who are, money hungry, greed. Right. Yeah. They're purposely destroying the planets because, dare I say, they may not even be human at the very top. Okay? And so, and I'm going to leave it at that.
I know.
So they are basically doing this out of selfish means. Even that is part of the perfect cycle, or whatever you want to call it, because nature has a way of cleansing itself and rebuilding, and so everything is in perfect. I mean, look at the symmetry of the planets and how they go round and round this ball, and it's constantly moving in perfect symmetry and perfection and timing. So,
and just to what you say, I was also shown and told, and it was most importantly because I experienced the vision of it, everything in life seeks its balance.
Yes, that's where the real power lies. I tell people, is by you sitting still and being in alignment with the source, not worshiping it, being in alignment with it within yourself. And nature is where it becomes the most powerful. You cannot walk through a forest and not be affected by the energy there.
Yeah.
It's like your senses come alive, and you realize that these trees are alive, and there's life, birds and there's plants and there's all this energy that's around you. It's the same concept with the source. We are the source. So when we quiet our minds and we center ourselves on a regular basis, what we call meditation, we could find that equilibrium and we could access the field of consciousness easier. Okay? And I'm sure, you understand this and your listeners do, but it's always nice to kind of be reminded.
Because we get so bogged down with the everyday life and not having time to tune in. But I mean, I never used to meditate. I never used, it just wasn't my thing. I wasn't always spiritual. But I also had to experience the other side of being in order to appreciate the other side of where I am now. But yeah, so those moments when I see, like sometimes when I look at a bird, I'm absolutely mesmerized. I'm absolutely lost. And it's the very few times where I am able to be in the moment. And I don't know about you, but for me, and I think most people that I know, it is bloody hard to be in the moment.
Well, I tell you what. Come to Sedona, spend some time here, and you'll get it. You'll be in the moment real quickly, because that's why, I felt the need to move north, and I kept hearing you need to move north, and I landed in Sedona. Now, as you know, Sedona is a very mystical, spiritual place and so on. But what it is really, it's a constant reminder of who you are and what's important. The beauty here is amazing. Okay, in this small little town of maybe 12, 15,000 people. It's such a daily reminder of what's important, and it resonates. Okay? And this happens, it could happen anywhere. But because of this place being so unique, and maybe it has something to do with the time, the longitude and latitude, not just the beauty, but because there've been tests done here, that there seems to be higher energy at certain locations, what we call vortexes and so on. Right. And so you're constantly reminded on a daily basis of what's important. And so when you do that on an ongoing, regular, everyday occurrence, that other stuff starts to fall by the wayside. The worrying, the stress, the anxiety, all of this others. I got to chase this, I got to chase that. And you become more in tune. And so it's really finding that place that you really resonate with. And it's always harder in the bigger cities because you have buildings, you have cars, you have billboards trying to sell you something. You're rushing around. And so it's easy to get distracted. But people in small towns.
Yeah.
Right.
For your attention.
Right. But people in small towns and small communities understand this concept. And, you don't realize it until you get older because something within you, your spirit, wants that connection. It longs for it. And so you appreciate it more. And then I can't tell you how many people as they've gotten older started gardening or painting or something along those lines because now they're tapping into a higher consciousness within themselves. So
my gut is asking me to ask you a question because I've talked about this, but it's always interesting to see somebody else's perspective, to hear somebody else's perspective. So when somebody comes in to you or to me and they're saying, I'm trying to be more intuitive, but I don't, so they're feeling something, but then they don't know if it's their ego or if it's their intuition. How does one recognize according to you?
Well, the first thing you realize that if it comes out of nowhere, that's intuition. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes I was either in the kitchen or doing something that I was focused on just doing it, and all of a sudden I get a message out of nowhere. It makes no sense whatsoever. That is you accessing information from a higher consciousness. So that is psychic ability. That's intuition. Mm-hmm. The other thing is when you try and focus on a question and you're looking for an answer, when you start seeing repetitive cycles. In other words, let's say tarot cards. You're asking a question, should I move? Okay. It also really depends on how you ask the question.
Yes.
I always suggest, never ask, questions that have questions behind them. In other words, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. God help me. This does not help. This is not a straight answer. You want to ask specifically, universe, show me where I need to live. And then, you ask the question and you may get the answer within a minute, 2 minutes, a week, a day. It doesn't matter. It'll just come to you. Mm-hmm. And that answer will keep coming to you until you pay attention to it. Okay. And so, that's how it works. There's a repetitiveness to it. Or someone will say something right away and your ears just like perk up. That's intuition. Okay. The other thing is the body is very in tune. Your stomach, your heart, these know what the right answers are. It's not so much the mind. Mm-hmm. The mind is a processor. And so, yes, it's an advanced processor, and those that learn how to use it, in combination with the heart and the soul and the stomach, make great psychics, And then, of course, with my modality, you add in the numerology, the astrology, all this symbolism. It makes life a whole lot easier. You just look at people and you start knowing exactly what they're all about. Yes. And the answers come faster because now you have some tools to work with. So it's really a practice. The problem is most people don't stick with it long enough.
Yes.
They just, I'm curious. I'll dabble in it. Oh, that's nonsense. Oh, that's nice stuff. Yeah, that's great. Let me go to my job. Let me get on the phone. Let me go on the internet and just, chit chat and do my thing. And they don't, stick to it. And
I think it's like anything else. It's commitment to yourself. Just like you would commit to your job and you're going to go in, you're going to perform at 100% or how, the best as you can. Because if you're not, your ass is going to get fired, right? We often don't give ourselves the same commitment we give to other people or other things.
Yeah, well, that's it. Most of the people, unfortunately, don't know what they want to do, and they don't know why they're here. And I'm hearing that more and more and more with this energy shift. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, mm-hmm. And I give them basic suggestions, because right now with this energy shift, it's meant for you to open up inside, realize who you are, realize the connection, see life everywhere, and sit still. We're so used to running around chasing things, money, cars, this, that, and all this other stuff that, it's all an inside job. This is what the ancient cultures know. It's all inside of you. This is why the yogis in India go and meditate, a couple of months at a time in the forest. They're looking for answers within, so.
And what I find fascinating, and I'm sure you know this too, majority of time that I talk to people, the ones that I talk to, they don't even know why they chase what they chase. They don't know. They just know that's what they want, but they don't even know why they want it.
Well, yeah,
they're not connected to the basic energy of why. Why do you want a car? Well, I want a nice car. Well, okay, how is it going to help your life? Well, I don't know. Well, why do you want a nice car?
Right, because they think
if you don't know what you're looking for, then how do you know when you're going to find it?
Right, exactly.
And it's all about being, not doing. Because Spirit always said, and you probably have the same thing. The being makes the doing happen. In other words, the doing happens as a result of the being.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But it's in this day and age right now, in the 20th century, everything has been about money and building, and it's all been artificial, by the way, based on the money supply and all this other nonsense. And so we've all been conditioned to want to have the house, the car, and all this, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's just, this is where we've been up until this point. The next 100 years has very little to do with any of that. Yes, a home or a place to live that's, nice and clean and shelter and all that other stuff. Absolutely. And food, growing your own food. But beyond that, it is a spiritual awakening that's occurring. And I like to call it the great spiritual awakening, because this generation, at this moment in time, has a unique opportunity where technology and spirituality are meeting up to awaken humanity at an incredible rate, if it chooses to. Now, this is the amazing thing, because nothing is set in stone, And so collectively, do we come together as a human race and say, okay, we want technology that doesn't destroy the planet, which already exists. We already know that.
Right.
We want to help each other out, help with farming or growing food, bartering, whatever it is. This can be done. This is not impossible. And we have to start valuing ourselves other than with phony money, And so I look at some of these poorer countries where the farmers are selling their fruits at the market on the streets and all that stuff. That's real value. To me, that's real value, because they worked hard to raise this crop or whatever, and they're exchanging it or they're selling it to someone else, on the street or whatever in the small villages. And there's a greater appreciation for that mindset, as opposed to now going into the big chain stores that are owned by, faceless corporations that basically want to poison you.
Yes.
Okay.
It does require change of consciousness, doesn't it?
Right. Yes, it does. And that's where we're at.
And would you say that's what you're the planet expert. That's where we're heading? Change of consciousness?
Yes, especially in 2023 and 2024. This is the time when the planet Pluto enters the sign of Aquarius. The Aquarius is the sign of humanity. It's the sign of technology. It's the sign of brotherhood. And so what we're going to have, not that far off. I mean, what are we talking? A couple of years, 6 years or so. We are entering a time where we're beginning to realize what's important. Now, I see this already here in Sedona on an ongoing basis. I cannot tell you, most of the people are friendly. Most of the people say hi. Most of the people are awake. Most of the people are aware. And so I see that. And so we need to be in places like that. You don't have to be just in Sedona, but you could find those places within your own communities, and become more aware and more loving. And this is how you increase the vibration or the energy, you see. So we are entering a time, from the astrology standpoint, we're going to go through a little bit of a rough patch because there's an adjustment period coming, and we're in it right now, by the way. where currencies and these leaders, so-called leaders get taken down. A new system is in play, and we got to get adjusted to it, and so on and so forth. So we're really, the next few years is an adjustment period, as I like to say. A big adjustment period.
So let me ask you this, and you may or you may not have any information on this. What do you think about artificial intelligence?
It's here already. Just look at your phone. You have a Google phone? You have a Siri on your phone?
Yeah.
That's artificial intelligence on a very low level. The technology exists already. And unfortunately, we've had it for quite a number of years. As a matter of fact, some were speculating that the internet is already being run by artificial intelligence. And so we're talking about, remember that movie, The Terminator, where the robots and machines took over?
Yes.
This is something that is very concerning to the ETs and the higher realms of consciousness. Does humanity want to just give up its power to machines and not participate and realize, the spiritual component? Or does it just want to let technology revolutionize its ways of living, and then slowly but surely we begin to self-destruct because we lose all sense of humanity?
Exactly.
So that's the crossroads we are at spiritually. When I see all these these young kids with the phones, and we all do it now. They're all sitting around a table and everyone is on their phone. Yeah. And so that is what I'm talking about. No one's having a conversation. They're just observing and learning through their phones. And so we have to make a choice. Do we want to maintain the spiritual component? Or do we want to just keep going down that road to artificial intelligence?
And with that said, again, going back to our consciousness, we can develop the most sophisticated machines, but if our consciousness doesn't change and it doesn't go higher, we will use that against ourselves.
Well, yeah, because the artificial intelligence will get to a point where it just thinks that it knows best. And, like I said with the Terminator movie, and we already have something to that effect, it's just not targeting people, but look at the but look at the marketers. A lot of those phone calls now that are driven by machines, trying to sell you something. That's artificial intelligence. They're picking out numbers and they're calling them and trying to sell you something, and it sounds like a human, that's a way of trying to seduce you by electronic means and technology.
So this is a bit of a offbeat question, but I had this conversation with my husband's friend, and he's kind of into that kind of thing. And there's this great debate within my head. When we talk about artificial intelligence, can consciousness be inside a machine? Is that even possible?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. When you study the UFO situation, many of them have suggested or have said, and I don't know this, I'm just reiterating what I read and understand, that many of those small grays are android. They're artificial. They don't have the heart, per se, to feel love, but they have the capacity to understand almost everything, but
would you
not
call that
be
a
able
soul?
to.
What would you call it?
They would. I don't think it's soul. No, I don't think it's a soul. I think it comes to the point of being a soul, but they still don't have the emotions, the feelings, and it's amazing because, and I'm basing this really on one particular book by Lawrence Spencer. This was he did the nurse that. Well, about Roswell, that crash at Roswell, very famous. Yeah. Well, supposedly there were three beings. Two of them survived, and later just one survived, and it was in the hospital. And Lawrence Spencer interviewed the nurse that took care of this being, okay? And it was an artificial being, but it was so highly intuitive that it was communicating with her telepathically. There was no verbiage. She literally got all this information from this being telepathically and explained to her in detail. By the way, you could find this book online in a PDF and read it if one wants to. I just got to remember the name of it, but Lawrence Spencer was the writer. And I remember reading this and I said, oh my God, man, does he detail, what she was saying about this being talking about consciousness, you know? And
wow.
so, it was just incredible. And so, but yes, but not to the point where we could have, souls. You know, it won't have a soul. It'll do almost Alien Interview. That's the name of it.
Oh, I'll have to write that down.
Alien Interview by Lawrence Spencer, and you could find a PDF and read it. And it's very good. And I suggest people to just look into it and, you know, whatever you think, keep researching. Just keep researching because it's going to get a little strange, but it'll start making sense to you.
I think JP had a question. JP, you had a question for Joseph.
Oh, well, plenty, probably.
Okay.
Go for it.
That last bit.
You only have like 4 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. The Empire and the Dominion. Fabulous stuff. Okay, sorry. I'm just eating at the end of a Toblerone, which is a Swiss chocolate, and it's very sticky.
Nice.
I wasn't expecting this. Thank you very much, Joseph. Thank you, Joanna.
What's the question?
Well, I mean, I could go on, but what do you think about the concept of the old empire and the dominion, Joseph?
When you say old empire, are you talking about beings that have been here for centuries, or are we talking about just, you know, Egypt, Sumerian, and, you know, all
From
these,
that interview.
Atlantis?
From the alien interview.
Oh, the alien interview.
Yeah.
Oh, did you read it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then you know what I'm talking about.
I know everything about, I know all about all the things that you spoke about tonight. They're like, oh, this guy's so switched on. I love it.
Fantastic. Well, you know, apparently this planet has been inhabited by many different races. And of course, there was that huge battle back then, 400,000, 500,000 years ago. And these races that were dominant took over, and they genetically started to, you know, interbreed with the form of human that was here. And it's always been a battle for the planet. So I think what's happening is that with the timelines that are changing, in other words, this increased in frequency, we may just access more information from that era or that realm, because I get information from the past very strongly at times. I'm sure you do too, Joanna. Mm-hmm. You know, because time really doesn't exist. Everything is there's the past, present, and moment are simultaneously. It's just where we plant our focus and our attention on. So we could literally go back in time and see that time and that time frame, and they're still experiencing it over there. And so I think we're going to see a lot of everything, JP. We're going to see and understand the real past and our real history, and people that are going to be curious about it are going to be drawn to it. And then there'll be people like me who want to see more of the space age, you know, visit the Pleiades, see other planets, interact with beings that are so highly evolved, but yet so loving and spiritual, you know, you could feel their vibration. So I think we're going to have a little bit of everything going on. And that Alien Interview book was, you know, was a wonderful read, based on, what truth was, you know, based on the ET there. What do they call it? Weeby? No, something B, I remember. And it was just a great read, Joanna. I highly suggest it. It's an easy read.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
It's really good. Anyway, if we have a few minutes left, I just want to talk about the eclipse coming up on February the 15th. This is another powerful eclipse. This is a solar eclipse, this time in the sign of Aquarius. And this has a lot to do with humanity once again. It has to do with the future. And so I would suggest to your listeners that if there's something you really want to do, write it down and make a 6-month to a 1-year plan of how you're going to achieve that goal. Okay? But it's really an eclipse about brotherhood. It's an eclipse about technology. It's an eclipse about ETs and UFOs, because Aquarius energy falls under that umbrella. Space, you know, all of that stuff. And so this is another powerful eclipse where we're breaking free from the old. because Aquarius energy likes to do things in an erratic, not normal way. Okay. And so it wants to break free. So with last month's eclipse, this month's solar eclipse, it's like a 1-2 punch saying, goodbye old, in comes the new. You see?
So no point to holding on to stuff. No point holding on.
You're not going to be able to.
Yeah.
This eclipse is about breaking cycles, breaking relationships, just moving forward in a new direction, and creating. This is a very creative, solar eclipse on the 15th. Strong, very strong for creativity.
Is it also about understanding and realizing and owning that we actually have more choices than we think we do?
Absolutely. Aquarius is the sign of humanity, and part of that humanity is understanding humanity and human nature. So Aquarians understand humanity very easily. So yes, I think on a personal level we'll become a little bit better familiar with our behavior. Okay? That's the way I have to describe it.
Fascinating. Joseph, please give us your website again, please.
planetswithin.com or josephpanthony.com. I put out a newsletter each month, so sign up for free. So,
thank you so much, Joseph. This was phenomenal. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. This was posted on the YouTube channel in 3 days. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Take care, everybody. Good night.